You know, guys, there's a few truths that I want to address in the photographic industry that I think are important. The first truth is that third-party lens manufacturers have come a long way, and there's some amazing optics out from many different manufacturers. Sigma is a perfect example of this. The second thing that I want to get across is that a lot of people want to get their hands on these third-party lenses, and Sony E-Mount is by far the most prolific lens mount. You got so many options for optical glass for the Sony E-Mount, and a lot of it is fantastic. And then the third thing I want to talk about is that when we review a lot of cameras, we inevitably talk about what third-party glass you can and cannot put on your camera. And Nikon Z-Mount is one that really comes up often because as much as they support Tamron, you don't see Sigma. And I know a lot of Nikon Z users want to use E-mount glass, especially Sigma glass, on their cameras. What do we do to fix that? There is a solution. That comes down to E-mount to Z-mount adapters. And so we had a couple that we want to test. The Megadap adapter, which we have a really cute story for, that was sent to us, but also the Viltrox adapter. However, I do want to get this out of the way before we go further into the video. We did try the Viltrox, but we had some issues with it. The firmware updating is like a really jank process, and unfortunately it didn't work, and we could not get this adapter to work with the lenses that we're testing. In fact, we could not really get it to work at all. In fact, even Viltrox lenses, their own E-mount lenses, wouldn't lock in place. So I think we have to address that in a later video. But we're going to talk about the Megadap adapter. We're going to test it out today. I'm Chris Nichols. This is PetaPixel. Got a cute story for you. And while we're on this same topic, you know, a lot of people are in this situation where they might have one brand and they want to switch out to another brand. This is a perfect example of why you might want to invest in one of these adapters. But if you've decided to commit to selling your old gear, this is a harrowing experience, and KH.com can make it a lot easier. They're a great resource for selling your gear. So first off, they have a really nice online quoting system. You put in the lenses and camera bodies that you want to move, the general condition, and they will give you an online quote so you know exactly what you're looking at before you send the products in. Once you do, you know that their experts are going to take care of everything. They're going to evaluate everything properly. They know all the ins and outs of the lenses and cameras that you're sending in, and you know that you're going to get a fair price without having to haggle with private sellers or meet people in dark alleyways and try to convince them to buy your gear and possibly not get robbed. So we really do like KH.com as a resource. It makes things simple. It makes things straightforward. If you want to move some gear, that's the best resource. Check them out. Go to KH.com. They are PetaPixel's preferred pre-owned camera gear partner. Okay, so specifically, we're going to be testing the Megadap ETZ21 Pro adapter here. The latest firmware is on there. You can see it's very thin, under 2 millimeters, basically adds negligible weight, seems to be adapting to the camera, nice and tight, everything's locking in place really well. And we're going to be doing a series of tests. So we're going to be testing an autofocus classic Jordan running test with both the Sony 7200 f2.8 G Master version 2, as well as the Sigma 7200 f2.8. So we're going to test those Pro lenses and see how they work. But I should also point out that this Sony E-mount to Nikon Z-mount pathway is by far, in my opinion, the most interesting because Nikon have a very wide lens mount but a shallow flange back distance, and Sony's the exact opposite, narrow lens mount but slightly wider flange back distance. So this all actually works out beautifully. It fits within the lens mount. You're going to get the exact same distances, the exact same focusing capabilities. You're not going to have any issues with close focusing, so it just really makes a lot of sense to adapt this glass. So a lot of you viewers requested this, so we tested it. Do these contemporary full-frame I-series lenses work properly on the Z bodies with these adapters? The answer is resounding yes. This is working great. This is a 50mm f2, full aperture control, everything's working great. Autofocus is lining up. And I mean, look, we wanted to really get a ZF body with a chrome I-series lens. That would look so sexy, but you know, this is all we were able to get. We have a 50mm f2 black on the Z8, and honestly, that looks sexy. So we've actually been preparing for this video for quite a while, and when we were in New York City for the B&H Photo Build photo show, we decided to see if we can get a Megadap adapter. So we went into the store, of course they have them, and you can get the latest ETZ21 Pro Plus for about $250. So it's not a terrible extra cost to be able to adapt all of your old glass. So we're prepared to buy one, but then we had an actual loyal viewer, Nick T. He came up to us at the show and he's like, hey, well, just so you guys know, I heard you were looking for the adapter. I have one. I don't use it anymore. It's the ETZ21 Pro. You guys are welcome to use it. All you have to do is give a big shout out to my dad, Rob, because Rob is a huge fan of Jordan's running test. You can see him getting ready, limbering up there. So, Rob, this one's for you. Okay, so Jordan's back there. He's getting ready to do his running test. I just want to explain some of the settings I'm using here. I'm going to shoot these tests at 200 millimeters at f2.8 to make it as demanding as possible. Continuous autofocus, 3D tracking, face detect here. I got nice fast shutter speed. And I do want to point out image stabilization is on and it's working great. And I'm getting full functionality of the aperture ring, whether I lock it to auto and control it through the body or do it manually on the ring. It's all being supported just fine. I'm going to start off with the SONY G-Master. Jordan, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
This one's for you, Rob!
Okay, so now I'm gonna do the Sigma 70 to 200 f2.8, same thing, 200 millimeters, f2.8, 10 frames per second. I've got this on release priority because I just wanna see how many shots are in, how many shots are out. And again, everything's fitting tight, it mounted well, there's no issues there. Aperture ring is working, everything's working the same on the Sigma as it did on the G-Master. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. And go for it. Oh, majestic. Yeah.
Go for you, Rob!
Okay, so for our next test, we want to just see how accurate does this adapter work with the lenses and are there any issues. So again, I'm going to shoot on the SONY G-Master 7200, 200 millimeters at f2.8. Same thing on the Sigma. Take a picture of the lovely Jordan here. He's got good eyes for this. And so he's going to be turned away. I mean, I would not normally shoot a portrait at f2.8 at 200 mil. The shallow depth of field is just so shallow, but this will really let us see if it's focusing right on the eye where it's supposed to go, because it is working with the Nikon eye detect. I mean, face detect, eye detect, they are working, but is it accurate? So we're also going to use a flash because that takes away any of the guesswork. Make sure that everything's just really sharp, no issues there. And again, we just got our small little Westcott FJ200 rapid box switch Octa S. It's a really nice, easy setup. I've got my universal transmitter here, so I'm totally wireless. And we're going to take some shots here of Jordan. If you want to get impromptu portraits, this is a great way to go. You should definitely click the link in the description below or visit fjwestcott.com and check this kit out for yourself. All right, let's get to the testing. Okay, so we've got our testing done. We're gonna go analyze that next. But before we do, I just wanna talk about the overall shooting experience of using these different brands of lenses with the adapter. So, I mean, I had very few glitches, like no menu problems or anything like that. I didn't notice any problems with image stabilization. The aperture rings are working flawlessly, whether you do auto or manual. I really like that. So in that regard, everything's working well. But there are some things I have with autofocus. So overall, the autofocus experience just felt in general slower. We'll see what the results are with our running test. But also, like, even just shooting Jordan with the flash trying to do portraits, I found that it was quite bouncy. Like, the eye detect would work, it would lock on an eye, but it would often go to the side of his head or to the other eye and back, and it was pretty flighty, just more than I would normally experience with those lenses on their native mounted bodies. And just another thing that I want to point out here is, if I'm using third-party E-mount lenses on Sony E-mount bodies, they do limit everything to 15 frames per second maximum with tracking autofocus. That's still not really an issue in most situations, but it is unfortunate that I don't get to max that out. I do want to point out that using the Megadap adapter with third-party lenses, Sony or Sigma or otherwise, I guess it's all third-party when I'm using the wrong mount on the right body here, I'm not going to have that limitation. I could shoot 20 frames per second or 60 frames per second. I mean, Z8s give me insanely fast burst rates. The only thing I will say is, will the autofocus keep up with that, given that it seems slower? Well, I don't know, but let's go check things out and see what we got. Okay, so we're back. We've had a chance to look at the files. Here are my findings, and actually pretty interesting. So, as I pointed out, I did notice the autofocus experience in general seemed a little bit slower than if I was using native Nikon Z glass or if I had these lenses on an E-mount body, okay? But this is what I'm noticing with the running test here. Sony first 7200, it actually did a pretty good job with Jordan at distance. There was only like 1 or 2 shots where it was a little bit off. Most of the time it was on his eye, even as he was running at 10 frames per second. Where I do then notice an issue is when Jordan gets closer to the camera. And I would say that this is an issue before or earlier in the sequence than I would get on an E-mount body with this lens. It just has a hard time keeping up, and it then tries to correct. And, you know, sometimes it does it, but for most of it, it's off on the shoulder or something like that. I will say that the Sony seemed to do a little bit better job, though, trying to track him up close, because we look at the Sigma, the far off distance, basically flawless. I mean, we didn't have any issues with Jordan running at the start of the sequence, does a great job keeping up with them. But at that same moment where he starts to get close, I felt that the Sigma had a harder time keeping up at those close ranges. Overall, though, I was actually pretty impressed. I mean, if I was shooting some sort of action or subject matter at longer distances where the focusing doesn't have to move very far, I was actually pretty impressed with how reliable it was. But now let's take a look at our static portrait test. Okay, Jordan's not moving, but we want very precise focus. We got really shallow depth of field. With the Sony lens, I would say this. It wasn't skipping around as much for me as it was on the Sigma, but sometimes it would still be on the eyebrow or just beyond the eye, but I did get a fair number where it was bang on right on the iris. When I take a look at the Sigma portrait, and this is where I notice a little bit more jumpiness, here I found, okay, sometimes it is on the eye behind, like his further away eye, even though I was specifically trying to focus on the closer eye, but when it hits, it hit really nicely. And so again, I would say it's pretty much a wash. I'm getting roughly the same result out of both lenses here. So one thing that a lot of people were saying out there is, okay, well, if you've got a Nikon Z-Mount, but you absolutely want to put Sigma glass on it or other E-mount lenses on it, just get a Megadap adapter and it's basically the same experience. And I mean, look, I was actually impressed by how smooth the process was using this adapter. Basically takes up no space on the body. But I wouldn't say the experience is exactly the same. And it really came down to autofocus. Like even in situations where you had a static subject without movement, not demanding, it's still just a little bit jumpy. And I would describe the autofocusing experience as just reminding me of like mirrorless autofocus from quite a few generations back. So sometimes it works really well and we get good hit rates. Sometimes it's a little bit unpredictable. One of the main reasons why we wanted to do this test is people were talking about the Sigma 300 to 600, which is an awesome wildlife lens and sports lens. And a lot of Z-mount users are upset that they couldn't use that on their camera. And so people are saying, well, get the adapter. And it's in situations like that where I would have a little bit of pause just because of the result that we saw with the autofocusing performance. Again, good, just not as reliable as I'd want for high-end wildlife, sports, and action. So overall, I think it's really going to depend on what your actual use case is. If I was in a situation where I had heavily invested in E-mount lenses and then for whatever reason I was moving it over to Z-mount, this might be a good stopgap so I can still use that glass. Or if I was just in the situation where I know, look, I don't have the most demanding autofocusing situations, I'm willing to take multiple shots, maybe more than I normally would, to ensure that I get something good or I can repeat the result, that also might be a really nice situation. And again, remember, we were just able to test the one Megadap adapter today. We didn't get a chance to test the Viltrox, and there's other brands out there as well. I mean, we could maybe revisit those at a later stage, but one thing I will say that is cool, these companies are always trying to update firmware and keep things current and fix bugs and stuff, so that's really nice. But you still have this issue when you're doing this mixing and matching. Like on the Nikon body itself, there was a recent issue where if you updated to the latest firmware, it actually caused some major incompatibility issues with third-party lenses. And actually on the adapter itself, it was saying, well, don't update to that firmware. Make sure you scale it back if you're going to use this adapter and stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is you're always going to have some of these weird bugs and issues and incompatibility as cameras get updated. And so I just feel like there's a lot of peace of mind with just sticking with the right lens mount and the right mounted body. That's probably what I would do in the future. Tamron do make some good lenses. There are some other third-party options that do work on Z-mount, and I'd probably stick to that myself if I was going down this route. But if this does sound interesting to you, if you find yourself in a situation where you do want to mount E-mount glass to a Nikon Z body, hopefully today has shown you that there is some feasibility to that desire. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks always for joining us. Give us your feedback. Let us know. I mean, there's a lot of information out there on these, and you might have your own personal experiences. We also love talking about this stuff on the podcast, which you can find on our exact same channel here, or all your favorite podcasting apps. Just search for PetaPixel Podcast, and you'll find it. Do also consider supporting our projects with a PetaPixel.com membership. This is a great way to help us fund some of our projects that go beyond photography, or be able to show you other stories that we find really interesting. $3 a month, $30 a year, very affordable. You also now get 5% off a lot of the pre-owned purchases you would make on Cage.com. That's a huge discount that you can really cash in on for a very small membership fee. You also have access to our sample galleries where you can see JPEGs and RAWs from what we've shot, so you can evaluate a lot of these things yourself. So definitely consider that. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.
That was all for you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Nick T.